Once upon a time, in a small coastal village, there lived a poor fisherman named Hans. Hans spent his days casting his net into the shimmering blue sea, hoping to catch enough fish to feed his hungry wife, Gretchen, and himself. Despite their poverty, Hans and Gretchen were content with their simple life. One sunny morning, as Hans was casting his net, he felt a tug so strong that it almost pulled him into the water. He heaved with all his might, and managed to pull a fish into his small boat. To his amazement, the fish began to speak. "Please, kind fisherman," the fish pleaded, "spare my life. I am no ordinary fish. I am an enchanted prince, and if you release me back into the sea, I will grant you any wish you desire." Hans, surprised by the talking fish, decided to spare its life. He gently placed the fish back into the water and said, "Dear fish, I wish for my wife and me to have a cozy cottage to live in." Before Hans knew it, the fish disappeared into the waves. And as he returned home, he found a charming little cottage by the shore. Hans excitedly told Gretchen about the magical fish and their newfound home. Overwhelmed with joy, Gretchen thanked Hans for his kind heart. But as days went by, Gretchen's greed grew insatiable. She could not be satisfied with their cozy cottage, and longed for more. She complained to Hans, "Why should we live in this small cottage? You should have asked for a grand mansion with servants and riches." Feeling obliged to fulfill his wife's desires, Hans went back to the sea and called out for the fish once again. The sea stirred, and the fish emerged, gazing at Hans with its wise eyes. "Greetings, fisherman," the fish spoke. "How may I be of service to you this time?" Gulping nervously, Hans relayed Gretchen's wishes for a grand mansion. The fish nodded and said, "So be it." Hans returned home to find a magnificent mansion standing where their humble cottage had been. Gretchen was overjoyed by their new extravagant home. But her desires were still not fulfilled. She grew more and more dissatisfied, demanding to become a queen and live in a palace. With a heavy heart, Hans once again sought the enchanted fish and told it of Gretchen's new wish. The fish appeared before him, its shimmering scales glistening under the sun. "Fisherman," the fish began, "it seems your wife's greed knows no bounds. But I shall grant her wish." When Hans returned home this time, he found himself in the midst of a grand palace with Gretchen seated on a golden throne, adorned in regal attire. The palace was filled with servants catering to her every whim. Gretchen reveled in her newfound power and riches, believing herself to be the most important person in the world. However, her desires continued to grow beyond reason. One day, Gretchen demanded to be crowned as the ruler of the entire kingdom, with the power to command the sun, the moon, and the stars. Feeling anxious about Gretchen's audacious wish, Hans returned to the sea. The fish, somewhat perturbed by Gretchen's greed, appeared once more. "Fisherman," the fish said sternly, "I warned you about the consequences of your wife's insatiable desires. But if she wishes to be the ruler of all, then so it shall be." Hans returned home to find Gretchen standing atop a golden throne, wearing a majestic crown. She commanded the sun to shine brighter, the moon to glow more brilliantly, and the stars to dance across the night sky. But as Gretchen wielded her newfound power, she became consumed by an insatiable hunger for more. She wanted to be worshipped as a goddess, to control the forces of nature, and even to become immortal. Hans, realizing the grave mistake they had made, rushed to the sea once more. He called out to the fish with a heavy heart, pleading for a way to undo the terrible consequences of Gretchen's wishes. The sea churned, and the fish appeared before Hans for the final time. Its voice carried a solemn tone. "Fisherman, I can no longer grant any more wishes. Your wife's insatiable greed has brought nothing but chaos and suffering. Return to your simple life, appreciate what you have, and remember the value of contentment." Hans nodded with remorse and returned home to find their cozy cottage by the shore. Exactly as it had been before their encounter with the enchanted fish. Gretchen, now humbled by their experience, embraced Hans. And they both realized the true meaning of happiness and the danger of unquenchable greed. From that day forward, Hans and Gretchen lived contentedly, appreciating the simple joys of life and never forgetting the lessons they had learned from the fish. And the fish, as if to bless their newfound wisdom, continued to swim freely in the sea. A reminder of the power of contentment, and the dangers of boundless desires.